You know that feeling, right? You're standing in the grocery aisle, totally frozen.
Paralyzed.
Yeah, just paralyzed by an ingredient list that reads more like a complex chemical formula than actual food.
It's less like shopping and more like navigating a labyrinth, really.
It really is. You're staring at GMOs, these vague stabilizers, a whole list of things you can't even pronounce.
And that feeling of being overwhelmed is, I mean, it's completely understandable. The label is often fighting against what's actually inside the box.
That's a great way to put it.
The real contents are just obscured by marketing language and, all that fine print. Our whole mission today is to give you the decoder ring for that.
Absolutely. So we're grabbing our magnifying glass and doing a true deep dive into the research. We want to pull out that crucial knowledge you need to be a really well-informed consumer, to make choices that, actually align with your health.
And we're focusing on 3 big areas of confusion.
Right. Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, those unnecessary fillers, and then the sneaky hidden toxins.
The goal here is just transparency. So let's start with the big one, the topic that generates the most headlines and, frankly, the most debate: GMOs.
Okay, let's unpack this. At the highest level, what exactly is a GMO?
Well, simply put, it's a plant or an animal where the DNA has been altered using genetic engineering.
And the goal is what?
It's always functional. It's all about agricultural efficiency. So they want crops that can resist common pests or maybe withstand certain diseases.
Or survive a drought, something like that.
Exactly, or extreme temperatures. You're basically engineering the food source to be more resilient and, give a higher output.
Which sounds like a technological solution to a global problem, and proponents, they champion that heavily.
They do.
But of course, efficiency often creates controversy, and the debate around GMOs is maybe the most nuanced in the entire food industry.
It really is. In our deep dive into the articles, it gave a really clear view of both sides, and we have to stay neutral on this.
Of course.
So proponents will suggest that these modified crops are, well, critical for feeding a growing world. They lead to higher yields and, importantly, less reliance on some of those broad-spectrum pesticides.
Which is a benefit for farmers and maybe consumers too.
They'd argue it's a necessary tool for global food security.
Okay, but then the critics raise some pretty fundamental questions, right? Usually centered around long-term health and environmental impact.
Yes, and the research highlighted concerns like potential allergenicity, because you're introducing new proteins into a food.
Right.
And there's a fear of broader ecological disruption if these, altered genes get out into the natural food chain.
And what about antibiotic resistance? That one comes up a lot.
It does, and we should clarify that because it's often misunderstood. That concern mostly comes from some older genetic engineering techniques.
Older?
Yeah, they used what are called antibiotic marker genes to see if the modification was successful.
Yeah.
The worry was that consuming those markers could, in theory, contribute to antibiotic resistance in our gut bacteria.
That's a really key detail. So with all that context, where does the research actually land? What's the consensus we pulled from the material?
Well, both arguments are very deeply held and they're well researched, but the reality is that the long-term implications are just not fully understood yet.
So we just need more time.
We need decades, more data. So as a consumer, awareness is really your best tool while that research catches up.
Okay, so let's get practical then. You're in the store. You want to know if a product has GMOs. How do you spot them?
You have to look for very specific language. It's getting more common now. The package might just say genetically modified, bioengineered, or derived from biotechnology.
And of course, some make it really easy for you.
Oh, yeah. They'll proudly display that non-GMO label if they can.
But if you don't see that non-GMO butterfly seal, that doesn't automatically mean a product is modified, does it?
No, exactly. It just means the company hasn't gone through that certification process, which can be pretty costly. And this is where geography really matters. Labeling laws create this huge variability. In the European Union, for instance, labeling is much, much stricter.
So it's easier to spot them there.
Much easier. In other places, you might have to rely on those third-party certifications, like the non-GMO Project Verified Seal, especially for high-risk things like corn, soy, and canola.
That's fascinating. So, okay, if GMOs are about engineering for, let's say, agricultural efficiency, our next category, fillers, that feels like it's more about engineering for economic efficiency or, just cutting costs.
That's the perfect way to describe it. Let's talk about fillers, the fluff in your food.
The fluff? I like that.
These are ingredients added mainly to bulk up a product, improve its texture, or extend shelf life. but they often compromise the nutritional integrity.
So you're paying for food, but a big chunk of what you're buying is just cheap, dense material designed to dilute the actual expensive stuff.
Precisely. It's all about diluting the nutrients.
You see this with yogurt, right? You think you're paying for dairy and fruit, but you're also paying for ingredients whose only job is to give you the texture yogurt without the cost of real cream.
It's paying for the illusion of substance. And the research, it names some key culprits to watch for.
Okay.
First, cornstarch and its derivatives. Just cheap, bulking agents. Second, maltodextrin. This one is powerful.
Why is maltodextrin such a standout red flag in all the research?
Because people overlook it. They're so focused on just the sugar content. But maltodextrin is a highly processed carb that your body absorbs incredibly fast.
So it has a high glycemic index.
Extremely high, often higher than table sugar. It causes these sharp, sometimes immediate spikes in your blood sugar. It's a hidden, fast-acting sugar.
Wow. And the third major one that research flagged was cellulose. This one always baffles me.
Cellulose is the perfect example of a filler used for bulk and structure. It's often derived from, believe it or not, wood pulp.
Wood pulp.
Or other plant fibers. Now, technically it's fiber, but it's used because it's extremely cheap and it's a great stabilizer. It stops cheese from clumping, things like that.
But nutritionally...
Zero digestible nutritional benefit for you.
And this lack of actual nutrition, it connects to a bigger behavioral issue, doesn't it? Like overeating.
Absolutely. Because fillers dilute the real nutrients, the proteins, the healthy fats. Your body isn't getting the signals that it's full.
So you feel less satisfied.
Exactly. You feel less satisfied even though you've eaten a lot of calories. So your body keeps signaling that it's still hungry, and it can lead to overconsumption.
Okay, so the clear directive here. How do we spot this fluff?
The simplest, most powerful tool is just the ingredient list. Scan it. If you see anything that seems overly technical or just unnecessary, be suspicious.
The shorter the list, the better.
Generally, yes. And be really vigilant about ambiguous terms, things like modified food starch, gums, or even just spices.
Why spices?
Well, it can sometimes be a catch-all for cheap texturizers or other additives that the manufacturer just doesn't want to list out individually.
Right, so if you need a chemistry textbook to understand your breakfast, maybe look for another brand.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Okay, let's move from ingredients that dilute to something, well, a little more insidious. Hidden toxins.
Right.
These are your artificial colors, your preservatives, flavor enhancers, things that sneak into food to trick our eyes or make a product last forever on a shelf.
And this gets into the really complex issue of regulation. Why are these things still allowed? They're used to make food look better or last longer, but the controversies around them are significant.
Let's get specific. What substances and health links did our research flag?
Okay, first up, artificial colors. Those really vibrant hues that make cereal, glow, or candies look extra bright.
Yeah.
They're often derived from petroleum. And they've been strongly associated with hyperactivity and behavioral issues, especially in sensitive children.
And then there are the preservatives. They're vital for shelf stability, but they create a lot of controversy.
Correct. You want to look out for BHA and BHT.
Butylated hydroxyanisole and butylated hydroxytoluene.
Exactly. They're very effective at stopping spoilage in things like packaged snacks and oils. But they've sparked this ongoing debate over their potential as endocrine disruptors and even potential carcinogens in high doses.
But then why are they still listed as generally recognized as safe, or GRAS, by so many regulatory bodies? That feels like a huge disconnect.
That is the crux of the issue. That GRAS designation often relies on older data or testing that focuses on immediate toxicity, not the long-term low-dose exposure.
Or the cumulative effects.
Exactly. The sources are pretty clear. While they may not poison you on the spot, avoidance is probably the best strategy because of the unanswered questions.
And finally, the classic flavor enhancer that starts endless debates. MSG.
Monosodium glutamate, yes.
Yeah.
It's used to heighten that savory umami flavor. And while it is recognized as safe, our research was clear that it can cause adverse reactions in some people.
Things like headaches or nausea.
Headaches, flushing, nausea, yeah. But the tricky part is that manufacturers often hide it to avoid the stigma.
They hide MSG.
How? They use euphemisms. Look for terms like hydrolyzed vegetable protein, autolyzed yeast extract, textured protein, or protein isolate.
Wow.
All of those contain free glutamate, and they act just like MSG in the body. But they don't have to be labeled as MSG. You have to be a true detective.
Okay, knowledge is power. Let's shift now to applying all of this in the grocery store. This is the real-time navigation of the label jungle.
And remember, the real story is almost always told in that fine print on the back, not the flashy marketing buzzwords on the front.
So true.
Let's start with probably the most common deception in the processed food aisle: sugar. Manufacturers know you're looking for the word sugar.
So they use a dozen other names for it?
Exactly. They dilute the perception of sweetness.
So what are some of those common aliases the research found?
Oh, the list is long, but key ones are dextrose, corn syrup solids, barley malt, rice syrup, maltose, and fructose.
So if you see 3 or 4 of those high up on the ingredient list,
You're dealing with a product that is mostly sugar, even if the sugars line on the nutrition panel looks okay.
and that leads right into the second big deception, which is serving size.
Yes. They manipulate the serving size to make the numbers look better. A bottle of soda might list a serving as half the bottle.
So the calorie count looks lower.
Right. You have to do the math. If you're buying a snack bag that says 2 servings, just assume you're going to eat the whole thing and double everything on that panel.
Calories, fat, sugar, all of it.
Get the true picture.
Let's take bread as an example. The front says made with whole grains. You have to just ignore that.
Flip it over. If the ingredient list is a mile long, look for some non-negotiables. Non-GMO, no high fructose corn syrup, and no artificial preservatives.
Like calcium propionate.
Yes, that's a good one. It's used to prevent mold, but it's often flagged as something to avoid. Look for those third-party certification logos. They're good indicators.
And this vigilance has to extend beyond just the pantry aisles, right?
Oh, absolutely. When you're buying dairy or meat, the labels tell you about the farming practices. Look for grass-fed for beef, free-range, or pasture-raised for poultry.
And hormone-free.
And hormone-free across the board. Those terms are clues that the animal had a cleaner diet and environment, which means fewer residues for you.
And for fresh produce, the advice is clear. Go organic when you can, but be strategic about it.
Exactly. You don't have to feel pressured to buy everything organic. Focus on the dirty dozen.
The fruits and vegetables known to have the highest pesticide residues.
Right. Even after washing. So apples, strawberries, spinach are the classic examples. But for things with a thick peel you throw away, like an avocado or a banana, conventional is often fine.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's quickly hit 2 common misunderstandings that came up a lot in the material. First, GMOs and toxins. Do all GMO foods have toxins?
Not necessarily. The modification is usually for resilience, not to create a toxin.
Yeah.
But some people prefer to avoid them because the crops are often engineered to withstand huge amounts of herbicides, like glyphosate.
So it's the chemical residue they're trying to avoid.
That's often the real concern.
Okay. And second, fillers. Are all fillers immediately harmful?
Again, no. Cellulose isn't going to hurt you on contact. But since they add zero nutritional value and they displace the good stuff,
And they can make you overeat.
and they contribute to that lack of satiety, the recommendation is really clear. Prioritize whole, unprocessed foods whenever you can.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We've covered everything from genetic alteration and petroleum-based colors to sneaky sugar aliases and wood pulp.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And being a savvy label reader it's an essential skill in a food industry that is always finding new ways to cut costs.
The key takeaway is transparency, and you get that through informed scrutiny.
Yeah.
And we just want to reiterate the power that you, the listener, really hold. By educating yourself about this stuff, GMOs, fillers, toxins, you're instantly better equipped to make choices that serve your health goals.
Not the manufacturer's bottom line.
Exactly. This knowledge empowers the choices you're making 3 times a day.
So go forth and explore food labels with confidence and, I'd say, intense curiosity. Remember, the true power is in your ability to read and understand those tiny, often intentionally misleading words on the back of the package.
Put on your detective cap next time you go shopping.
You'll find that the labels start to tell a completely different and far more honest story.